Hi, welcome back to CS170. We're covering Excel pivot tables. The earlier lecture we did this week was just around Excel tables, and hopefully we can extend off of that. Okay, so here we are on pivot tables, and kind of similar to where we're coming off the end of like the Excel tables in the last lecture, where we were talking about like data validation, right? So you can see, certain things here in terms of like blanks, right? The extra little functions like the subtotals and whatnot. It's things that you can validate with your data validation tools. Some of you did the extra credit, which had the if check in there, which you can also do. In case you didn't catch that, let me scroll back down to the bottom here. So you remember this, right? So it's just basically like putting in some validation or checks on the values. So whatever you define it to be, it could be like a number range. It could be saying whether it's a blank or not. So that kind of fits in nicely to here. And I think, like I said, for the people that did the extra credit, you also were able to implement those checks with the if statement. Okay. Now, the one that you couldn't do a data validation on, but I guess you're just going to have to figure it out when you look at it with when you review the sheet, would be each column has a unique name. Okay. And there's a reason for that, which you'll see later when we start to create a pivot table. Okay. And then the titles thing, which is basically the top part, which would be the row one. You're going to have this one row here, right? So you have item number and whatnot, right? So that's pretty much like sort of like the minimum data requirements when it comes to pivot tables. Okay. So similar to like last time, I'm just going to whip up like the sheet here with the data. You don't have to match exactly to what I'm doing, so that way you can kind of come up with it quicker, right? So what do we got here? We got product, category, amount. So we got product, category, amount, date, and country. Okay, so it looks like we got berries. Let's just let's maybe do how many berries. I just drag it down and do 5 berries, and we do oranges. Take oranges down a bit. Apples. Take apples down a bit to here, and carrots. And that should be that. We should get us down to here maybe. And so let's see, berries are fruit. I'm going to drag that down to here. I should have just dragged it down some more, right? So oranges, apples, and vegetables. We only got carrots here. Okay, and take that down to here. I double click to make sure like the width is okay. And the amount, some varying amounts. 2890, 1, 5. 2857, 4362, 1488, 4062, 3, 4, 749, 4140. Okay, and I'm just gonna make all of this to be currency, like that. And so these are all dates in 2014, looks like. So catch that. Uh, oops. And countries, what countries are we doing here? Okay. France, uh, USA, and okay. Let's see if I can do this. Go. All right. Good enough to get us going here, right? So we just whipped up the data here. Again, this is something that, all of you might want to practice. It doesn't take too long to bang out like the sample data like this. So we got like something to work with now. So this basically just gives you like the pivot table. Pivot table is actually a very commonly used thing in Excel. Um, so you can go ahead and just look at any number of resources, but this is one right here. Okay. Um, Here, similar to the table, main thing here is click on only one cell here, right? And then you're going to do the insert into the pivot table. All right. And you'll end up with something like this. Okay. Um, so let me try to do this side by side here. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to do insert. I'm going to do a pivot table. Okay. So you can see it already picked it up here. And let's make it into a new worksheet. And let me see. See, I want the product. Maybe I want the category. And maybe I want the country in here. Something like this. And the amount here would be the values. Okay. Well, maybe I want to take this up to here like that. Okay. So I don't know if you saw what I just did here, but basically I wanted, because there's some commonality here, right? You can see apples, berries, and fruits oranges under fruit here. And then you have like carrots under vegetables. So to me, it made more sense to put like the fruit and the vegetables at the highest level. And then you have the subcategory for each of these, right? It looks a lot better than if I flipped it the other way like this. You see, it kind of did that. It makes more sense to go the other way. So that's why I flipped it around like that. Okay. Um, I guess we can do the date here too. We'll put the date into the filter and I'll kind of do it like that. Okay. You know, I don't, it looked, the pivot's actually getting a little bit cluttered here, but I'm just kind of putting it here just to kind of show something here. Uh, do I have anything here? I don't remember any of my dates here. Let me go back to here. 4/15. So look at 4/15. Okay, so we have from the top down, and actually I don't want to show this months here. I'm gonna take this one out here. Okay, so this looks a little bit less cluttered. So this goes back to where we were before in terms of having like the fruit at the higher level grouping, and then we have like the apples, berries, and oranges here. And I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. So these are all amounts here and by country, right? So you can see the top part here is the country. Let's see, maybe I'm gonna make them centered a bit here, like that. Maybe actually I want all of these centered. So let me center all of these like that. Okay. And you can see what I'm doing here. When I click off of the pivot table, you can see all the stuff on the right to kind of adjust the filter kind of disappears. But when I click back on the pivot, you can see it opens these things up here. So basically, the way to think about pivot table is to have whatever fields you want to display, whether you want to display it across the top with the columns or on the left with the rows like this. And then the values is going to sum up, right? And summing up in this case, it's kind of easy because you only have like an amount, right? Look at this. You only have this. This is the only thing you're going to sum up, right? So we have an amount that we can sum up here. And, you know, I'm not sure how useful it is to filter by date, but that was the only field I had left. So that's why I put the date up here to filter. And that's why you have this up here. Okay. So this is basically telling you for, well, overall it's telling you for fruits, how much there are. But in this case, we're talking about fruit, let's say from France, right? So fruit from France is 1439 for the date of April 15th. Okay. Not really sure how useful that number is to filter out on one particular date, but maybe for whatever reason you care about what's come in on a particular date, and that's what you're going to look at, right? But maybe I'm just going to say all here, and this picks up everybody. Okay. When I say everybody, I mean all the dates. Okay. So that's kind of like how a pivot table works, right? So you take the data, only select one cell, just like you did with the table, and then you get to play around with these fields and figure out whether you want to put them into the columns, into the rows, if you want to put filters. Jeez. And that's it. Okay, so let's see if we can pick up and continue some more here. Okay. Yeah, so, well, can we do a sort on this? Well, let's see. There you go. You can do a sort on this. I can do another filter here, right? Let me take out berries here. And berries are gone, right? So this is similar, if you remember, to all the table stuff that you did, right? Remember the sorting that you can do here? Sorting like that. Okay. So it's similar to what we were doing on the tables for the last time here. Okay. Oh, so we can change this too. Um, so down here, this happens to be the sum of the amount. But if we want to do something else with it, I don't know, you want to do average? Let's do average. Okay. So you can do the average of the amount to say, let's say you're delivering stuff throughout the year. You want to know what's your average delivery amount, let's say. So that's another thing. It just kind of defaults to sum because I think most of the time you're going to be using the sum. But there's obviously other things you can do. They kind of align to like what you saw on the subtotal function. So you can do like min, max, average, and count. Okay. So changing the summary calculation. Yeah, so we just did that, right? So in this case, they were changing the sum. I kind of changed it to be the average, but it kind of works the same, right? Okay, so this just talks about like creating like the pivot table, which we just did. So hopefully you can follow the example that I just did here. Okay, so this talks about like the interactive table, which is basically having this chart, and then as you play around with it, it kind of interacts with the chart here. Okay, so let's see if we can create that chart here. Let's see here. Insert. Okay. So notice what happens down here. You got your filter here again. Okay. And I have this. I think we only have one vegetable. So let me take the vegetable out here. Okay. Just put that back on. Good. Let me take out, let's take out France. Okay. So you can see what's happening here. Basically, you have the same functionality, right? In terms of being able to take out like whichever thing, right? You want to take out like a fruit or vegetable, you want to take out like a country or something. And then your graph will just kind of automatically update here. Okay, so that's what's going on here, right? You can see the example they had here in the PowerPoint. They have like the product over here and the country down here. And it's the same type of thing. You can play around with the filters however you like, and then the graph will automatically update the visualization. Okay, so yeah, this is no different. It's the same type of thing. So you can play around with this and, figure out like what you would like to do there. And this one would be doing like an export, not an export, like the number of apples into a pie chart. So you might play around with this. I know I already gave you extra credit, so I'm not going to give you another extra credit. This is something, if you want to play around with it, you can go ahead and try and do that. So remember, for a pie chart, what is it that you're trying to get to? It's trying to get to like a total number that you can subdivide into different parts to equal to that total number. So in this case, you're talking about all the apples, right? So here's all your countries, let's say. I only picked 4 in the thing I whipped up. I only have 4 of these countries here. But let's say you had apples into 4 countries, however many countries, doesn't matter. And they all added up to whatever number. And then you're able to take each of those numbers to form a pie chart, essentially. So So think about that. You want to try it, that's fine. If you want to send it to me, that's fine too. But I'm not making it obligatory for anyone to do this for extra credit. That's up to you. Okay. But it's something for you to try out. Right. But it works the same way like what I just did here in terms of creating a chart like this. Okay. Filtering, like I showed you the filtering, put the date before. So that's what I did up here with the date. Okay. All right, we did the sorting before, right? It's just like some questions here, but these are the type of questions. Don't worry about these questions in particular, but you think about this type of stuff. If you're looking at this, pretend you're like, you know, an importer of like, or you're a supermarket, you're importing all of this stuff from different countries and whatnot. You can answer different types of questions. Are you having like most of your stuff come from a particular country? Is it like during a certain time of the year? You know, whatever, right? There's any number of these type of questions, which is kind of in common that you can see here. Okay, so anyway, so that's it for pivot tables. And don't forget, you have some stuff in your resources. You also have stuff like this here, but pivot tables are so common. There's a whole bunch of like references for pivot tables out there. So you can take a look at it. But what I just showed you is basically, you know, the gist of pivot tables. The only thing I encourage you to do is play around and perhaps try to do the pie chart with the apples here. Okay. All right. Thank you and have a good night.